Now that we have understood the disability justice movement, let's move on to the climate justice movement and what it entails. You're probably wondering that climate justice is probably only about the climate. What does it really have to do with social justice? Let's find out. Let's complicate this discussion a little bit. It is true that climate justice has to do with climate change, or specifically, the long-term shifts in climate patterns and rises in temperature that are caused increasingly by human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels like coal and petroleum, which causes the emission of greenhouse gases and disturbs the Earth's carbon cycle. You may have heard of the excessive use of jet fuel for traveling and untreated industrial waste which lead to climate change as a result of these carbon emissions. Now, how is the world responding to this climate change? Simply put, we're mitigating by reducing carbon emissions and adapting to existing changes using frameworks of practice like the reuse, reduce, recycle, remove, and the redesign framework. Where and how effectively this work is being done is, however, a separate conversation and one where it is crucial to discuss an important dimension of the larger climate justice movement. The climate justice movement seeks to make climate change and efforts to address and mitigate the effects of climate change about more than the climate and the Earth itself. It operates with the understanding that climate change impacts different communities across the world differently, such that its negative consequences are felt most strongly by the already marginalized groups such as indigenous people, Black people, gender minorities, and other communities who are particularly vulnerable to them. To understand this differential impact, let's think of a few examples. The global fast fashion industry, which is led mostly by people in the global north, uses parts of Africa, like Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, as grounds for waste disposal, which has led to a water crisis in this region, polluting key water bodies like the Nairobi River. In 2021, about 458 million of the 900 million used clothing imported in Kenya were worthless, ending up polluting landfills. The livelihoods, identities, and social systems of indigenous communities that rely on complex and carefully preserved ecological systems are negatively impacted by pollution and climate change. In the Chitral district of Pakistan, approximately 5,000 people belonging to the Kalash community are grappling with the profound impacts of accelerated climate change. Among the 3,044 glacial lakes in northern Pakistan, 33 are deemed to be at risk of bursting, amplifying the threat of glacial floods that have reshaped entire landscapes in the region. Climate change displaces low-income, indigenous, and other vulnerable families, women and girls constituting over 80% of the displaced population. Women and girls are increasingly responsible for care work like cooking, going long distances to fetch water, and caring for the ill, as well as paid labor in precarious conditions, which exposes them to various health risks as well as sexual and gender-based violence. Did you notice how climate change unevenly impacts marginalized people? Are there more such examples that immediately come to your mind as we're having this conversation? The climate justice movement asserts that conversations about the conservation of the earth and who leads it cannot be held in isolation of the differential realities it presents for people across the world. Intersectionality again is at the core of this discussion. From the 1970s, when the subject was discussed by the UN bodies, and in India in the Chipko movement, to the 1982 Warren County sit-in by the African American community, to the formation of bodies like the Indigenous Environmental Network, to more recent developments such as the EJ 2020 Action Agenda in the US, broadly, the movement is concerned with building and engaging resilient communities, community-centered solutions to adaptation, and pathways for a just transition. Have you observed similar climate justice advocacy in India in recent times? I encourage you to use an intersectional lens to examine such advocacy and share your findings with us. I hope this video helped you understand the roots of the climate justice movement, and in the next video, we will explore data justice.